I texted my mother that I was excited for my sister's wedding next week. She replied 3 words at 11:07 p.m. It was last week. By sunrise, I had stopped being the forgotten daughter and started being the person who writes endings. I work in compliance. I do not beg for invitations. I issue consequences in public. My name is Sloan Mercer. I am 31 years old, and I was on the night rotation when the text message arrived. It was 11:07 p.m. The 23rd floor of Graybridge Systems is a morgue of polished concrete and recycled air after dark. I don't mind it. I prefer the quiet. The low thrumming hum of the server farm down the hall is the only heartbeat this high up. My terminal cast a sterile blue light onto my desk, illuminating nothing but my keyboard, a cold ceramic mug of black coffee, and the spine of the 400-page regulatory update I was annotating. I work in compliance. My job is to find the rot before the structure collapses. I read contracts, I follow money, and I believe in consequences. I am, as my mother has always said, the practical one. My personal phone, set to silent, vibrated once on the aluminum desk, a short, sharp buzz. It was the Mercer group chat. I glanced at it. My mother had posted 8+ photos. I paused my review of a vendor contract, a flicker of warmth. My sister's wedding was next week. These must be the final preparations, the flower arrangements, perhaps a shot of the dress she'd forbidden me to see. I had texted my mother earlier that day. Can't wait for the big day next week. Let me know if you need me to pick up anyone from the airport. She hadn't replied, until now. I tapped the screen. The photos loaded. It wasn't preparations. It was the event. White candles, hundreds of them, suspended in air, a wall of glass reflecting the night sky. My sister, Tessa, radiant in a dress I'd never seen, her hand, manicured, holding a champagne flute, on her finger, a ring. Beside her, a man I vaguely recognized from holiday dinners, smiling. Ethan. Photo after photo. My mother, her face tight with organized joy, adjusting Tessa's veil. My father, beaming, walking her down an aisle littered with white rose petals, aunts, uncles, cousins, my entire family, captured in high-resolution, professional-grade photography. They were at the Glass House at Westridge, the venue Tessa had dreamed about since she was 16, a place famously booked 2 years in advance. There was a caption from my mother, posted just seconds before the photos. The most beautiful night for our sparkle. My phone buzzed again, a direct text from her. Clearly in response to my message from 12 hours prior, I swiped over. 3 words stared back at me. It was last week. I looked at the text. 11:07 p.m. I looked at the photos in the group chat. I looked back at the text. The words did not rearrange themselves. I stared at the concrete wall beyond my monitor. I felt nothing. My body went perfectly still. It's the stillness that precedes a seismic event, the intake of breath before the plates shift. I was not in the photos. I was not at the wedding. I was not invited. It was last week. The implications fractured and spread. The dress fittings I wasn't called for. The planning I wasn't included in. The date, deliberately obscured. My sister, my only sister, had walked down the aisle, and I was 400 miles away, auditing expense reports. My phone buzzed again. My mother. You're just so busy with that job. Honey, we knew you couldn't get away. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't make a big deal. The corporate minimization of a familial execution. The air in my lungs felt thin. Recycled one too many times. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been omitted. A line item vetoed from the budget. A risk mitigated. The practical daughter, the one who talks about SEC regulations and data privacy, wasn't a good fit for the sparkle. Then, the final seal. In the group chat, underneath the album of beaming faces, a new notification appeared. My father, he hadn't written a word. He had simply replied to the photos with a single thumbs-up emoji. A blue, pixelated thumb. That was the eulogy. That was the dot at the end of the sentence. The closing of the file. I closed the chat. I did not breathe. I turned back to my monitor. The regulatory update was still open. I read the same sentence 3 times and could not parse it. It was last week. My fingers moved, automatically, driven by the cold procedure that governs my life. I clicked away from the PDF and opened my work calendar. I went back 1 week. Saturday, last Saturday, the date of the wedding photos. My calendar was a solid block of red. Strand and Vale Internal Review, 9:00 a.m., 11:00 p.m., confidential. I was here. I was on this floor. I was 12 hours deep into a forensic audit of a third-party logistics vendor. My team was investigating a whistleblower complaint alleging bribery, kickbacks, and falsified invoices. We were tracking a ghost, a shell company set up to launder payments from our partner, Northford Holdings, through Strand and Vale, and back to someone. Strand and Vale. I looked at the name on my calendar. And then I remembered the name of the man smiling next to my sister. The groom. The man my father had toasted. The man my mother had welcomed. Ethan Vale. The hum of the servers suddenly felt deafening. The recycled air felt toxic. Vale. It was a common enough name. It could be nothing. A coincidence. A cruel joke played by the universe. I do not believe in coincidences. I believe in data. My fingers flew. I minimized the calendar. I opened the encrypted drive. I navigated to the investigation folder. Case file 881B. Strand and Vale. I opened the primary PDF, a 200-page confidential report. I hit Ctrl+F. I typed VALE. 0 results. Of course, the vendor itself was Strand and Vale. I tried a different search. I opened the subfolder. Cross-reference, Northford Holdings personnel. Northford was our partner, the company whose payments to Strand and Vale we were auditing. The whistleblower alleged someone at Northford was directing the fraud. I opened the org chart for Northford's supply chain division. I searched again. Ethan Vale. 1 result. Director. Vendor Relations, Northford Holdings. My blood did not run cold. It evaporated. I stared at the name. Ethan Vale, the groom. The man who had just married my sister in a glass house paid for with... What? The man whose vendor accounts I was currently auditing for high-level bribery. I clicked on his profile. The photo was professional, bland. The address listed for his corporate contact was the Northford headquarters, but there was a note in the investigation file, appended by one of my junior auditors. Suspected secondary location linked to S&V payments, 1400 Westridge Drive. Westridge. The glass house at Westridge. They were not just a match. They were an overlap, a Venn diagram from hell. The entire 23rd floor was silent, but my mind was screaming. They hadn't just forgotten me because I was busy. They had excluded me because I was a threat. My job, the practical job they dismissed at Christmas, the one they joked about being boring. My job was the one thing that could incinerate the perfect night they had manufactured. Sloan Mercer, the chief compliance officer for their Eastern Division, was the family's auditor, and I was investigating their new son-in-law. My hand was shaking. I forced it still. I placed it flat on the cool metal of the desk. Emotion is a liability. Process is a shield. I moved with precision. I opened a new, blank, encrypted text file on my local drive, a notepad only I could access. The blinking cursor waited. I typed a single line. They did not invite me to the wedding. I will invite them to a different stage. I went back to my phone. I took a screenshot of the 11:07 p.m. text message. It was last week. I took a screenshot of my mother's follow-up. Don't make a big deal out of it. I took a screenshot of my father's thumbs-up emoji. I emailed the images to my secure work address, scrubbing the metadata, and saved them to a new folder on the encrypted drive. The folder was not named Family. I named it Evidence Mercer. I turned back to the Strand and Vale file. The 200-page report. It wasn't just a regulatory update anymore. It was a script. I looked out the window. The 23rd floor is all glass. a fishbowl suspended over the sleeping city. Far below, the headlights of a few cars moved like isolated cells. They had their party in a glass house, curating their reality, showing the world their perfect, sparkling image. I work in a glass tower, uncovering the truth. The sun would be up in 5 hours. My night shift was just beginning. They excluded me from the party. I will invite them into the glass room. The name on my monitor was Ethan Vale, Director, Vendor Relations. It glowed. It was a fact. Facts are my territory, my family. They operate in feelings, in optics, in curated moments. I was born in Cliffhaven, a town that values solid foundations and visible success. My mother, a master curator, adapted this. She had 2 daughters and cast them in opposing roles from birth. Tessa was our sparkle. I was the practical one. This narrative was established before I could form memories. Tessa received applause for singing off-key in a school play. It showed her passion. I received a quiet nod for being valedictorian. It was expected. Tessa was emotion. I was function. It was a neat, clean script. It kept the family photo albums balanced. The sparkle draws the eye. The practical holds the frame steady. They always forget. The frame is what keeps the picture from falling apart. This erasure wasn't a sudden event. It was a death by 1,000 quiet dismissals, a lifetime of being edited out. My college graduation, summa cum laude, the first in the family. I waited on the damp lawn for an hour after the ceremony, holding my diploma. They arrived late, blaming traffic, holding melted celebratory ice creams. "We got here for the important part, right?" my father had joked, meaning the piece of paper, not the 4 years of work. When I made vice president at Graybridge last year, a promotion that put me in charge of compliance for the entire eastern seaboard, I called them. The line was quiet. Then, my mother said, "Oh, honey, that's big. We're so proud." That night, I received a single text from the Mercer group chat. A generic, animated fireworks sticker, that was all. A 99-cent digital acknowledgement for a seat at a table they couldn't even comprehend. Tessa, by contrast, received a fully catered party at the country club, complete with a string quartet, for passing her real estate license exam on the 3rd try. I clicked on Ethan Vale's personnel file. Start date, 24 months prior. I cross-referenced it with the first flags in the whistleblower complaint. The timeline was a perfect match. The alleged kickback started 23 months ago, just after his probationary period ended. I remembered the family dinner last month. It was at their club. The lighting was soft, expensive, designed to make everyone look affluent and kind. I had been stressed, working the initial Strand and Vale data dump, and I mentioned the pressure of the case. My father held up a hand, a gesture of polite cessation. "Sloan, please, no work at the table. It's so technical. You'll bore Tessa." He said it with a gentle, chiding smile, as if protecting the creamy risotto from contamination. Then, not 5 minutes later, as the second bottle of wine was being poured, he leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "Speaking of work," he said, "that corporate card they give you, what's the limit on that? Anyway, is it true those executive cards have no ceiling?" They didn't want my work. They wanted the perks. They wanted the shimmer of success, but not the machinery of it. They didn't want to know how I earned my seat. They just wanted to know if the seat was expensive. This is how they see the world. A series of surfaces, an image to be managed. And Ethan Vale, my new brother-in-law, fit perfectly into that curation. Tessa met him at a hospital fundraiser. "He's in finance. Sloan," my mother told me over the phone, her voice reverent, as if announcing a minor miracle. "Northford Holdings, very stable, very significant." I was invited to the dinner where they announced their engagement. I sat next to an uncle who asked me if my job was like being an IRS agent, but for computers. Ethan held court. He was charming. All white teeth and stories about sailing. Everyone laughed. Later, standing by the valet, I overheard my mother talking to my aunt. Tessa is just so light, you know? She needed someone like Ethan, someone who understands celebration. Sloane, well, Sloane is just so dry. She doesn't really fit with this kind of joy, does she? Dry, like kindling, or a ledger. I didn't fit. The justification was set. I remember, years ago, watching my mother help Tessa get ready for her senior prom. They were standing in front of an antique full-length mirror in my mother's bedroom. It was a scene of pure cinematic adoration. My mother was fixing a pin in Tessa's elaborate hair, her eyes meeting Tessa's in the reflection. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother whispered, her voice thick with an emotion I had never heard directed at me. "Look at you. Your day. Your day is what deserves an audience." I minimized Ethan's file. The desktop background was the Graybridge logo, an audience. I finally understood. I was never meant to be in the audience. I wasn't even meant to be backstage. I was the person they sent away so the real show could go on. Because I am the person who asks the questions that stop the show. All those years of being pushed just outside the family photo, just to the edge of the holiday table, to the seat by the drafty window. It wasn't neglect, it was training. It taught me how to stand outside the frame. It taught me to stop looking at the smiling faces and start watching the person holding the camera. Who is setting the scene? Who is paying for the lights? Who gains from this specific, curated image? At Graybridge Systems, that is my entire job description. I am paid to find the fingerprints of the person operating the camera, to find the hidden wires, the off-balance books, the transactions disguised as consulting fees that are, in fact, something else entirely. My lens isn't pointed at a church aisle. It's not interested in the white roses or the champagne or the sparkle. My lens is mounted inside our secure servers. It is aimed directly at the payment chains, the encrypted emails, and the vendor approval logs. I don't want an apology. I don't want an explanation. I don't want them to make it up to me. Apologies are just another form of curated reality, an attempt to smooth the surface and rewrite the narrative after the fact. "We're sorry" is what you say when you get caught. I'm not interested in sorry. I am interested in the ledger, the immutable, factual, unfeeling truth. Because the truth has serial numbers, it has signatory approvals, it has IP addresses, it has timestamps. My phone screen was dark. The group chat was silent. The family had gone to sleep, satisfied with their perfect night, their perfect secret. I pulled up the Strand and Vale investigation file again. I opened a new document. Memo 14A, Request for Expanded Authority and Forensic Accounting Support. They had their day with an audience. I was about to build them a new stage, and this time, I would be running the lights. The sun was a faint, chemical gray pressing against the glass of the 23rd floor, signaling the end of my shift and the beginning of the city's. I had not moved in hours. The air in the office was stale, and the low hum of the servers had burrowed into my skull. But I was not tired. I was energized. The initial shock had crystallized, hardening from a personal wound into a professional imperative. I was no longer the forgotten daughter. I was the lead investigator. My focus narrowed to the two open windows on my primary screen. On the left, the case file 881B, Strand and Vale Investigation Ledger. On the right, a cached vendor packet I had just pulled from the public web server for the glass house at Westridge. I work in facts. My family works in feelings. The problem is when feelings are financed by fraud. I started with the money. It's always the money. The Strand and Vale file was already flagged for 3 high-value, non-standard payments, all pushed through in the last 60 days. All were classified under special vendor consulting, a notoriously vague category often used to hide pass-throughs. Invoice 33A, $48,000. Invoice 33B, $64,000. Invoice 33C, $97,000. All 3 had been fast-tracked, bypassing the standard 30-day net payment cycle, with justification marked Urgent Project Commencement. I looked at the Glass House vendor packet. It was a glossy PDF, full of photos of smiling couples and lists of approved caterers. I scrolled to the fee schedule. Tier 1 venue deposit, non-refundable, $48,000. Tier 2 catering and staffing deposit, due 30 days prior, $64,000. Tier 3, final security and incidentals, due 7 days prior, $97,000. They weren't similar, they weren't approximations, they were identical. Down to the last dollar, a perfect, 3-part match. My new brother-in-law hadn't just gotten a kickback, he had forwarded the entire bill for his luxury wedding to his employer, disguised as a consulting fee, and my company, Graybridge Systems, as Northford's primary partner, had effectively co-signed the check. The next gear needed to click. Who approved the payments? I pulled the digital signatures from our system. The payments to Strand and Vale were not approved by Ethan Vale. He was too insulated for that, too senior. They were approved by a Martin Kincaid, Vice President of Procurement at Northford. I pulled up the Northford internal organization chart again. Martin Kincaid. A single line of reporting snaked up from his name. Reports to Ethan Vale, Director, Vendor Relations. Ethan didn't sign the checks. He just told the man who did sign the checks where to sign. He managed the vendor. He was the vendor. The money was locked. Now, the method. The invoices from Strand and Vale had been submitted through Northford's digital portal. I pulled the source packet metadata for all three. Submitted via IP 72.11114.201.5. Submitted via IP 72.144.201.5. Submitted via IP 72.114.201.5. I ran the IP address against the registrar. Registered to Northford Holdings, LLC, Corporate HQ, 1400 Westridge Drive. He wasn't just directing the fraud. He was physically uploading the fake invoices from his own office. I checked the timestamps. 10:14 a.m., 2:09 p.m., 11:30 a.m., all smack in the middle of the workday, the sheer breathtaking arrogance of it. He was billing his own wedding from his own desk. But I needed intent. I needed a voice, a mistake. My team had already performed a data mirror of the Northford servers related to Kincaid and Vale as part of the initial investigation. The data sat in our secure archive. I went into the raw cache, the digital ghost yard where emails live for 90 days after a user deletes them. I searched the deleted items from Ethan Vale's mailbox. I searched for Strand, glass house, wedding, invoice, nothing. He was clean. He was smart. So I searched Kincaid's, the man who signed the checks. I found it in less than a minute. An email from Ethan to Martin Kincaid, sent from Ethan's personal iPhone at 8:52 p.m., the night before the second payment, the $64,000 one, was approved. Subject: next tranche. The body of the email had been deleted, but our server-side backup catches everything. I expanded the record. One single, devastating line. Mark, this one can't be consulting again. It's drawing red flags in the system. Make it look like the floral expansion budget. No one ever questions flowers. Floral expansion. The phrase echoed in the silent office. I looked back at the wedding photos my mother had so proudly posted. The cascade of white orchids, the walls of peonies, the tablescapes that looked like a Dutch master's painting. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a botanical garden. I opened my web browser. I went to Tessa's private Instagram. Her profile picture was her and Ethan, kissing under an arch of roses. Her bio listed her wedding vendors, each one tagged with a heart. Venue, at the Glass House. Dress, at Vera Wang Flowers, at Flora by G. I clicked the link for Flora by G, a high-end floral design studio. Their Instagram page was a riot of color. I scrolled back 1 week, the day of the wedding. There it was, a post. Our biggest installation ever. So thrilled to make magic at the Glass House today for T&E Wedding Luxury Wedding. The photo showed a literal truckload of white hydrangeas. That was good, but I wanted the lock. I went to Flora by G's main website. I clicked on their blog news section, and there, posted on the exact same day as the wedding, was a press release. Flora by G is proud to announce a new corporate partnership. We are expanding our services to include large-scale corporate installations, thanks to a wonderful new contract with Northford Holdings. He hadn't just said, make it look like floral expansion in an email. He had done it. He had manufactured a fake corporate contract with the florist to cover the extravagant cost of his personal wedding. He had paid for his peonies with a purchase order. He had turned his wedding into a kickback scheme. I had him. The sun was now fully up. The first members of the day shift were arriving, their keycards beeping at the elevators. My shift was over. My real work was beginning. My fingers moved with a new, cold precision. This was not feeling. This was procedure. I opened a new document, Memorandum 14B, to General Counsel, Graybridge Systems, from Sloan Mercer, VP Compliance, Eastern Division, subject, urgent, request for immediate disbursement, freeze and external investigation, vendor 409A, Strand and Vale. I did not mention the wedding. I did not mention my sister. I did not mention Ethan Vale's name. Not in the subject line. I am a compliance professional. I built the case, brick by brick. Per case file 881B, we have uncovered definitive evidence of high-level self-dealing and invoice falsification originating from our partner, Northford Holdings, routed through approved vendor Strand and Vale. We have traced 3 payments totaling $209,000 to non-corporate entities for personal use by Northford Management. This represents a material and immediate risk to Graybridge Systems. I attached the 3 invoices side by side with the Glass House fee schedule. I recommended an immediate freeze on all payments to Strand and Vale. I recommended elevating the case to an external forensic accounting team. I hit send. It was 7:02 a.m. Second, I opened the calendar for the Internal Ethics Committee. As VP Compliance, I have override authority. I scheduled an emergency session. When? Monday, 9 o'clock a.m. Where? Conference room 23B. The big one, all glass, overlooking the atrium. Attendees: CEO, CFO, General Counsel, Head of Internal Audit. Subject: critical risk, Northford Strand and Vale vendor fraud. Third, I opened the master case file. I had to log the conflict. This was the final, formal partition. Case note 881B045. S. Mercer. Investigator must flag potential self-dealing with familial nexus. Primary person of interest at Northford, E. Vale, has been identified as new spouse of investigator's immediate family member, sister. I paused, my fingers hovering. Investigator confirms 0 prior knowledge and absolute professional partition. The familial relationship is now a material fact. Investigator will recuse from final determination, but will present all findings to the Ethics Committee. I saved the note, I was the weapon, and I had just handed myself over to the people who knew how to aim me. Finally. I stood up, my legs ached. I walked to the central high-speed printer. I printed a single page. It showed the 3 Strand and Vale invoice numbers, the dates, the amounts, and in a second column, the 3 Glass House deposit requirements, the dates, and the amounts, a simple damning ledger. I slid the warm piece of paper into a crisp, white 9x12 envelope. I didn't write confidential or private. I took a black felt-tip pen from my desk cup. I wrote 2 lines in the center of the envelope. For when they ask why, I let the ink dry. Then, just below it, I added the final notation. I was not invited. I brought receipts. I sealed the flap, the adhesive tasting bitter and final. I placed the envelope in the exact center of my desk, a single white rectangle against the dark wood. It looked like a place card at a table setting for one. Monday morning, 8:45 a.m. The main atrium of Graybridge Systems is a cathedral of commerce, all glass and steel, designed to make clients feel wealthy and employees feel small. The sound of 1,000 people starting their week, the clack, clack, clack of hard-soled shoes on Italian marble, the hiss of the espresso bar, the low murmur of ambition, echoes up 50 stories. I was crossing the sky bridge from the parking garage, the white 9x12 envelope in my left hand, my ID badge in my right. My heels were a weapon, striking the terrazzo with a sharp, metronomic beat. I was on my way to room 23B for the 9 o'clock a.m. Ethics Committee meeting. I was on time. I am always on time. And then I saw them. They were clustered by the main security turnstiles, an island of soft, expensive weekend fabrics in a sea of dark blue suits and corporate gray. My family. They looked lost, like tourists in a museum they didn't understand, staring up at the 50-foot digital waterfall that displayed our stock ticker. My mother, in a cream-colored cashmere coat that was entirely wrong for a corporate lobby. Tessa, in a bright floral dress, her hair perfect, as if she'd just stepped out of a photo shoot. And behind them, a head taller than everyone else, stood Ethan Vale. The clack of my heels stopped. The sudden silence in my own sphere made them turn. "Sloan!" My mother's voice was a violation, too loud, too bright, brittle with forced cheer. She rushed forward, her arms open. I did not move. She stopped, settling for patting my arm. "Thank goodness. We were about to have you paged. We decided to surprise you." "We're all going to brunch," she continued, her eyes darting around the lobby, impressed, proprietary. "Come home and celebrate today. Don't be so sulky about what's past. It's just a party, honey." Sulky, the word, a small, petty dismissal, hung in the sterile, recycled air. "Artie, look." Tessa, my sister, didn't approach. She held up her phone, not to me, but at me. It was a barrier, a shield. The wedding slideshow was already playing on her lock screen, a relentless loop of curated joy, white candles, the kiss, the champagne toast, and then a close-up of her hand on Ethan's, the diamond glittering, catching the cold, artificial daylight of the atrium. It flashed, over and over, a pulse, a warning light, a system failure. "Isn't it beautiful?" she breathed. Ethan finally moved. He stepped forward, standing beside my mother, a perfect, united front. He wore a dark, impeccably tailored suit, a quiet power tie. He looked like he belonged. He smiled his polite, professional smile. "Sloan, good to see you." His eyes, the eyes I'd seen across a holiday dinner table, did a quick, automatic scan of the lobby. He wasn't looking at me. He was assessing the infrastructure, the security, the sheer, expensive scale of the Gray Bridge headquarters. He was the auditor, calculating the value of the room, the risk. He was auditing my world, and he had no idea he was the asset being seized. "I can't go to brunch," I said. My voice was flat. "Oh, cancel it," my mother said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "This is family." "My 9 o'clock a.m. meeting is with the Ethics Committee," I replied, my voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "My 10 o'clock a.m. is the all-staff town hall. You're right." I looked at my mother, then at Tessa. Then I let my gaze rest on Ethan. "This is about family, so you should come with me." Their smiles froze. This was not in their script. "Don't be silly." "Sloan," my mother started. I turned to the granite security desk. The guard, a man I'd nodded to every morning for 5 years, was watching. "Mike," I said, holding up my badge. "I'm issuing 4 temporary passes for conference room 23B. Escort required." The elevator ride was silent. The air was thick with my mother's perfume, a heavy floral scent, and the unasked question. My mother kept looking at the white envelope in my hand. She tried to fix a piece of my hair. "You look so tired. Honey, you're working too hard." I didn't move. The doors chimed and opened onto the 23rd floor. The 23rd floor is the executive level. The carpet is thicker. The air is quieter. I led them down the glass-walled corridor toward 23B, the fishbowl, the room I had specifically booked. It was empty, a long, black, reflective table, 12 empty chairs, and on the far side, a 30-foot wall of glass overlooking the massive, sunlit atrium we had just left. They walked in, hesitant. "Sloan, this is a little much," Tessa said, her voice small. "We just wanted to take you to brunch." "Please, sit." I gestured to the chairs on one side of the table. They sat, huddling together, their coats still on. I stood at the head of the table. "This room," I said, my voice perfectly level, "is the primary broadcast studio for the executive floor. Its audio feed is patched directly into the main company system for the 10 o'clock a.m. quarterly town hall, so the entire company can hear." A flicker in Ethan's eyes. The auditor was finally present. "What are you talking about? A town hall?" my mother asked, her voice losing its brightness. "I'm going to tell you a few things," I said, "before my 9 o'clock a.m. meeting starts, and then, at 10 o'clock a.m., you're going to listen, along with everyone else." My mother laughed. It was a high, nervous, terrible sound. "Sloan, what is this? Some kind of corporate power trip? Is this because you missed the wedding? Don't be so dramatic. Don't you dare bring your company nonsense in here to ruin this family." I stopped. I looked at her, her face, flushed with anger and disbelief, at Tessa, whose eyes were wide with confusion, her phone now dark in her hand, at Ethan, who was perfectly, unnaturally still, his polite smile a rigid mask. "Ruin the family?" My voice was quiet, but the room's high-spec microphones were already live, recording for the archive. The family already got into company business. I placed the white envelope on the black polished table. The thwack of the paper on the wood was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a gavel, the sound of a file being closed. Ethan's eyes locked onto the envelope. His smile didn't falter, but the blood drained from his face. He knew my handwriting. He knew what a receipt looked like. I walked to the lectern at the head of the table. I tapped the touchscreen control panel. The room's lights dimmed to presentation mode. I sent a one-word instant message from the panel to the AV team in the control booth 2 floors down. "Prepare." The 30-foot screen behind me flickered, then flooded with a bright, clean, uncompromising white, black, sans serif font, 48 points high, a simple, devastating title. "Ledger of a Wedding," the title slide, "Ledger of a Wedding," hung in the air, projected 30 feet wide. The white was so bright it hurt to look at. The door to 23B hissed open. 8:59 a.m. Sarah Whitcomb, the CEO, walked in, followed by our general counsel, Anya Petrova, and the head of internal audit. They stopped short. They saw me at the lectern. They saw the 3 pale, confused faces sitting at the table. My family. "Sloan?" Anya, the GC, said, her voice sharp. "This meeting is classified. What is this?" "This is the subject of the investigation," I said. I nodded to the 3 people at the table. "The familial nexus. Please, sit." My mother started to stand, to perform her socialite greeting, but the coldness in my voice froze her. The executives took the chairs on the opposite side of the table, their leather briefcases snapping open. A silent, hostile line was drawn. I turned to the screen and pressed the button. My voice was amplified, not loud, but inescapable, clear, cold, and carrying. "Slide 1, I said. The screen changed. 3 invoices appeared, side by side. Clean, digital, sterile. Vendor, Strand and Vale, LLC. Service, Special Vendor Consulting. Invoice, 33A. $48,000 hours. Invoice 33B, $64,000. Invoice 33C, $97,000. These are the 3 payments flagged by the whistleblower, totaling $209,000. I stated. I advanced the slide. A red box appeared, highlighting the digital approval signature on all 3. Approval. M. Kincaid, VP Procurement. Authority. E. Vale, Director, Vendor Relations. "What is this?" my mother whispered, squinting at the screen. "Sloan, this is just boring work." "Ethan," Tessa said, her voice small. That's your name. Ethan's face was a polite, professional mask. He watched the screen. Not me. Slide 2. A new document appeared next to the invoices. It was a PDF, branded with an elegant, leafy logo. Venue contract. The Glass House at Westridge. Client. Tessa Mercer and Ethan Vale. Sloan! My mother's voice was a gasp. That is private. It was hosted on a public web server, I replied. It is now Discovery. I clicked again. Red lines, like lasers, shot across the screen, connecting the numbers. Strand & Vale invoice, 33A, $48,000. Connected to Glass House deposit, $48,000. Strand & Vale invoice, 33B, $64,000. Connected to Glass House catering staffing deposit, $64,000. Strand & Vale invoice, 33C, $97,000 connected to Glass House. Final security incidentals, $97,000. The match was perfect. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of Anya Petrova, the general counsel, sliding her glasses on. The disbursement dates from our partner, Northford, I continued. Match the payment due dates on the venue contract to the day. Tessa was looking at Ethan. Her face, so full of curated joy in the lobby, was collapsing into a map of pure confusion. Ethan? I don't understand. You said your bonus covered this. What is this? Ethan did not look at her. He looked at me. Sloan, this is out of line. We are not at the line yet, I said. Slide 3. The screen showed a screenshot of a recovered email. From Ethan Vale, private, redacted, com, to Martin, Kincaid at Northford, com. Subject, next tranche. Body, Mark. This one can't be consulting again. It's drawing red flags in the system. Make it look like the floral expansion budget. No one ever questions flowers. I let the words hang. Then I clicked. Metadata. Sent, October 12th, 8:52 p.m. IP. Geolocation. The Westridge Country Club. This email, I said, was sent during the rehearsal dinner. My mother's hand went to her mouth. You were spying on us. I was running a trace on a compromised executive account, I said. Slide 4. The screen filled with color. It was an Instagram photo. My sister, Tessa, laughing, her veil backlit by the sunset, holding hands with Ethan. It was beautiful. It was taken from an account I didn't recognize. Cash, at Meg's List. Account private. Image captured by Googlebot. 10:13. This is a cached photo from one of your bridesmaids. Tessa, I said. It was posted. Then the account was locked, but the internet had already saved it. It provides time-stamped visual confirmation that the event, financed by the preceding invoices, took place. Get it off there, Tessa cried, her voice cracking. Take my picture down. It's not your picture, I said. It's Exhibit D. Slide 5. The screen changed to a graphic, a stylized map of the United States. A red dot glowed over Northford's headquarters in our city. A blue dot glowed over a data server in Delaware. A sharp, animated line connected them. Data packet. Invoice 33C. Falsified. Origin IP 72.1114.201.5. Northford HQ. E. Vale, Director's Suite. Destination, Strand & Vale, Vendor Portal, Shell Server, Timestamp, October 15th, 2:14 a.m. After the wedding was over, I narrated, my voice cold. 2 days after, in fact, Ethan came into his office in the middle of the night to upload the final fraudulent invoice, the one that covered the $97,000 incidental fee. He did it from his own desk, on his own IP, trying to hide it in the graveyard shift data logs. Ethan's mask was gone. His face was wax. He looked pale, small, and suddenly, profoundly stupid. Slide 6. The screen filled with black text. Graybridge Systems Partner Code of Conduct, Section 5.3, Conflicts of Interest and Misappropriation. I read the words aloud. Partners and their employees shall not, under any circumstances, engage in self-dealing, misappropriate funds, or use partner resources, systems, or vendor accounts for personal financial gain. This includes, but is not limited to, the financing of personal events, property, or services disguised as corporate expenditure. I stopped reading. The room was a vacuum. The CEO was staring at Ethan. The head of audit was writing, his pen scratching loudly on a legal pad. I turned from the screen. I faced the table. I gripped the sides of the lectern. I leaned into the microphone, which I knew was now live. It was 9:09 a.m. The town hall feed didn't officially start until 10 o'clock, but the AV team always patched the executive feed early. I knew the audio was already piping into the atrium, into the monitors on every floor. I looked at my mother, at my sister, at the man who had erased me. "I am Sloan Mercer," I said, my voice low, but carrying the resonance of the entire building. "I am the ethics officer who was uninvited from the wedding financed by my company's risk." Through the glass wall of 23B, I could see the atrium 50 stories below. The early crowds gathering for the town hall had stopped. They were standing still, looking up at the massive screens, which were mirroring my presentation. The atrium, usually a roar of commerce, was dead silent. This is a misunderstanding," Ethan finally said. His voice was a rasp. He stood up, knocking his chair back. "This is not what it looks like. Sloan is taking a complex vendor relationship out of context." He turned to the CEO. "Ms. Whitcomb, this is a family dispute. She's vindictive. She's upset she wasn't invited to the wedding, so she built this fantasy." "This is monstrous! Sloan!" my mother shrieked, finding her voice. "You're ruining your sister's marriage. You're ruining this family, all because you were sulky." I did not look at them. I pressed the button on the lectern. Slide 7. The screen changed. Title: Anonymous Hotline Transcript, Case 881B. The text of the call filled the screen. Caller: Verified, Northford Procurement. "I'm on Kincaid's team. We all know about the wedding fund. That's what Vale calls it. He told Kincaid he needed the Strand account to perform for his wedding." Caller: "He joked about it. He said, 'My wedding is a vendor relationship, and I'm going to make sure it's a profitable one.'" Caller: "He threatened Kincaid. He said if he didn't approve the floral expansion PEO for the $64,000, he'd be made redundant by Q3. Martin has 3 kids. He was terrified. He signed it." Ethan Vale sat down. He didn't just sit. He collapsed. The air left his body, and he fell into the chair. My mother's mouth was open, but no sound came out. Tessa was crying, thick, silent tears that dripped off her chin and onto the polished black table. She was looking at her husband. I clicked one last time, returning to the summary slide. The 3 invoices, side by side with the 3 wedding deposits. I looked past my broken family, past the stunned executives, and directly into the camera lens that was broadcasting my face to 3,000 employees. "My investigation is complete," I said. "The evidence is definitive. The risk is contained. We did not attend the wedding." I let the silence hold. Then, I turned my head, just slightly, to look at my sister. "The money did," the final words of the presentation. "The money did," hung in the silent, refrigerated air of room 23B. The slide, showing the perfect, damning parallel of the invoices and the deposits, was still projected 30 feet wide, a monument to the crime. Tessa's sobs were small, animal sounds, the only noise in the vacuum. My mother was sheet white, her hand still over her mouth. Ethan Vale, Director of Vendor Relations, was a void. The silence was broken by Anya Petrova, the General Counsel. She didn't look at my family. She didn't look at me. She tapped the built-in microphone at her seat. Her voice was pure ice. "Get me General Counsel for Northford Holdings," Now, her head of internal security, who had been standing by the door, nodded and stepped into the hall. Anya tapped another button. Revoke all access for Martin Kincaid. Suspend his credentials. Lock his terminals. Effective immediately. She looked at the head of audit. David, confirm with finance. All payments to Strand and Vale are frozen. Lock the vendor portal. I want a digital snapshot of every transaction they've ever touched. David was already typing on his laptop. Done. The corporate machine, my machine, was moving. It was a beautiful, terrible thing. A shark that smelled blood and moved with chilling, impersonal efficiency. Anya, I said, my voice cutting through. The executives turned to me. My full brief and official recommendations are on your tablet, submitted at 07:02 a.m. Anya Petrova, a woman who billed $400 an hour, swiped her screen. She read, Motion to engage an external forensic accounting firm. Motion to freeze all current and future contracts with Northford Holdings pending investigation. Motion to file a preliminary risk report with the SEC. She looked up, first at the CEO, who gave a single, sharp nod, then at me. Approved, Anya said. All of it. The CEO's phone buzzed on the black table. A hard, angry vibration. She looked at the screen. Investor relations, she said, her voice tight. They're monitoring the internal feed. They're asking why the town hall audio is broadcasting an active investigation 10 minutes early. They need a risk update for the 10K filing, she said, her eyes boring into me. Now, what's the exposure? Page 14 of the brief, Ms. Whitcomb, I replied. I had anticipated this. I am practical. You'll find a 12-line summary. I can read it for the record. The CEO nodded. I turned to the lectern, my voice carrying over the internal broadcast system, a premature eulogy for Ethan Vale's career. Graybridge Systems has identified a material weakness in the vendor controls of a key partner, Northford Holdings. An internal investigation, now escalated, has confirmed misappropriation of funds totaling $209,000, routed through a shell vendor, Strand and Vale, for the personal financial gain of Northford management. This may constitute a violation of our partner code of conduct and potentially the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. The immediate financial exposure to Graybridge is contained. We are cooperating fully with our partners to resolve, and will engage with regulatory bodies as required. I stopped. The CEO nodded again. Send that summary to IR, word for word. Already sent, I said. It was in that moment of absolute sterile procedure that the human element tried to reassert itself. Ethan Vale, who had been staring at the table, his face the color of ash, suddenly fumbled for his phone. He was a trapped animal, looking for the one exit he knew. You can't, he stammered, his fingers slipping on the glass screen. This is slander. I have a lawyer. The glass doors to 23B hissed open. Two uniformed Graybridge security officers stepped into the room. They were tall, broad, and wore their blue blazers like armor. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They simply flanked the doorway, their hands clasped. They were a human wall, a full stop. Ethan's phone clattered from his shaking hand onto the table. The sound was obscenely loud. My mother, who had been frozen, finally snapped. Her terror, her confusion, her humiliation, it all found its target, me. She stood up, her cashmere coat falling from one shoulder. Her voice wasn't a shout. It was a low, venomous whisper that was somehow louder than a scream. You did this. Her eyes were black. You disgusting, practical bitch. You have ruined your sister. You have ruined this family. You brought us in here. You put our private life on a screen to humiliate us in front of everyone. She gestured in red, wildly, at the glass wall, at the thousands of employees in the atrium below. All for a party, because you were jealous, because you weren't invited. I looked at her. I saw her for the first time, not as my mother, as a co-conspirator. I am not humiliating the family, I said, my voice flat and dead. I am saving my company, the one that pays me, the one you dismissed. This company has rules, its integrity, its shareholders, its 3,000 employees. Their jobs are worth more than your brunch. I took a step toward her. You are humiliated because you got caught. I was humiliated because I was erased. My voice dropped, and I leaned in, just for her. You humiliated me last week. You did it quietly, in a text message, because you thought I was irrelevant. You decided I wasn't worth a seat at the table. I looked at Ethan. I looked back at her. You chose this fraud, over me. You made a decision about what family means, and today, I made a decision about my job. I turned away from her. I picked up the white 9x12 envelope from my desk, the one I had prepared that morning, for when they ask why. I didn't give it to the CEO. I didn't give it to the GC. I walked to David, the head of internal audit. He looked up, confused. David, I said, one more item for the external audit team. This one was not in the file. He took the envelope. He opened the unsealed flap. He pulled out the single sheet of paper. It wasn't my ledger. It was a bank statement. My mother's. While Mr. Vale was financing his wedding with fraudulent invoices, I narrated, my voice echoing in the dead silence. He was also securing the silence of his new family. David's eyes scanned the page. You will find a direct wire transfer, dated 2 weeks before the wedding, for $25,000. It is from a Strand and Vale operating account, directly into my mother's personal checking account. I pointed to the memo line on the statement, which David was now holding. The memo line reads, wedding gift. A small, wet choking sound came from my mother. She collapsed back into her chair, her hand on her chest. He didn't just buy the wedding, I said to the room. He bought the silence. He bought the complicity of the curator. The CEO, Sarah Whitcomb, looked at my mother. It was the first time she had acknowledged her presence. Her face was pure, unadulterated contempt. I didn't know. The voice was tiny, broken. It was Tessa. She was staring, not at me, but at her new husband, then at her mother. I didn't know. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining the perfect makeup. Mom, he paid you? To what? To lie to me? She looked at Ethan. You said it was your bonus. You told me. I didn't know any of this. I looked at my sister, the sparkle, the pretty, fragile ornament they had all decorated, and I believed her. She was the only one in that room, besides me, who was telling the truth. She was the prop, the prize, the justification for the entire crime. She was as much a victim of their curated reality as I had been. I looked at her, crying, her life disintegrating in real time, and I felt absolutely nothing. I turned my back on her. I left her there in the wreckage. I did not offer a hand. I did not offer a word. She was not my problem. She was theirs. I had done my job. Anya Petrova stood up. The meeting was over. It's 9:57 a.m., she announced. She nodded to the two officers at the door. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Vale and these ladies to the lobby. Their temporary passes are revoked. They are not to be permitted access to this building or any Graybridge property again. My mother looked up, her face a mask of primal terror. Sloan? Wait. Ethan didn't speak. He was hollow. He stood, and the guards moved in, one on each arm. Ma'am, this way, one of them said to my mother. They were escorted out. My mother, my sister, my new brother-in-law. They didn't look back. The door to 23B hissed shut, sealing the room. I was alone with the three most powerful people in my company. The giant screen behind me went blue, then switched to the Graybridge corporate logo. A digital clock appeared in the corner, 9:58 a.m. Anya Petrova straightened her suit jacket. She looked at me. The all-staff town hall begins in 2 minutes, she said. We are broadcasting from this room, she paused. Sloan, you are staying. It was not a question. It was not a promotion. It was a command. I was the one who had pulled the fire alarm. Now I was the one who had to stand in front of the building and tell everyone the fire was real. But it was under control. The digital clock in the corner of the blue screen hit 10:03. Instantly, the wall-sized screen behind me, the one that had just displayed my family's financial crimes, flashed to life. The Gray Bridge Systems logo dissolved, replaced by a quad-split screen showing the CEO, Anya Petrova, the CFO, who had just joined, and me. My face, pale from a 24-hour shift, was now being broadcast to 3,000 employees. The main feed was us, in room 23B. The room had become the stage. The CEO, Sarah Whitcomb, looked directly into the main camera. She did not smile. "Good morning," she said, her voice a precise, confident instrument. "We are preempting our standard quarterly review. We have an urgent internal matter to address. 10 minutes ago, our ethics committee was briefed on a significant breach of our partner code of conduct." I could see the internal chat feed on a small monitor at the lectern. It was a digital river, silent, but I knew that river was about to become a waterfall. "This breach," Sarah continued, "was discovered and escalated by our Vice President of Compliance, Ms. Sloan Mercer. Ms. Mercer is here with us. She will summarize the findings for the entire company. We are doing this because our first and most important value is transparency." She turned her head, the camera following her gaze, and fixed her eyes on me. "Ms. Mercer, can you summarize the conflict of interest for us?" This was the moment. This was the stage they had built for me, the one they never knew they were building. I was not the practical, sulky, forgotten daughter. I was Ms. Mercer, VP of Compliance. I leaned forward. I did not look at the CEO. I looked directly into the black, soulless lens of the broadcast camera. I was speaking to every junior analyst, every manager, every executive. I was speaking to the entire building. "A wedding," I said, my voice clear and amplified, "was funded by mischaracterized vendor payments. Our primary partner, Northford Holdings, was used to launder $209,000 through a shell vendor to pay for a private ceremony." I let that hang, the chat feed, which had been scrolling with confused "what" and "who" messages, exploded. It was a cascade of text, a digital panic, moving so fast I couldn't read the individual messages. "Our systems," I continued, "which our partner had access to, were used to facilitate this fraud. Our name was on the bill." The chat flashed. I saw one message clearly, a single line from a user I didn't know. Wait, Mercer? Was she even invited to the wedding? The question was a spark. It lit up the feed. OMG, whose wedding? Was it her wedding? No. Her sister's. I saw it on IG. They didn't invite their own compliance officer? The digital murmurings of 3,000 people. The CEO looked at me. A silent question. "Handle it." I looked back at the camera. My face was a mask of professional calm. "No," I said, answering the unasked, public question. "I was not, but I showed up where it counts." A new sound, a muffled shout from the hallway outside 23B. "You can't do this! That's my wife! You're lying!" It was Ethan's voice. He had been escorted out, but clearly not far enough. The camera feed flickered as the operator in the control booth debated what to do. A shadow appeared at the frosted glass door of the conference room. He was lunging, trying to get back in, trying to step into the frame. "Anya, I'm suing you all. Slander. You. One of the two security guards, the large one, didn't even turn. He simply put one hand, flat, on the glass door, a quiet, definitive, physical stop. He looked at Anya Petrova, who was visible in the quad split. Anya didn't even turn her head. She spoke, her voice flat. "Remove him from the building, now." The shadow at the door disappeared. The shouting faded. The guard's hand remained on the glass for a beat longer. A silent punctuation mark. before he too stepped away. The entire incident took 4 seconds. I had not flinched. My gaze had not left the camera lens. The CEO turned back to me as if nothing had happened. "The situation is contained, Ms. Mercer. What are your recommendations for remediation?" This was the final act, not the discovery, the solution. "My recommendations are threefold," I said, my voice cutting through the residual tension. "First, an immediate, independent, third-party audit of all vendor accounts associated with Northford Holdings, going back 24 months. Second," I continued, "full, transparent disclosure. We will provide a complete summary of our findings to our partner, Northford, and cooperate with their own internal investigation, which I expect will be robust, and we will make a formal public statement clarifying that Greybridge Systems was a victim of this fraud, not a participant. Third," I said, my voice hardening, "we report. We submit our findings to the relevant regulatory bodies, including the SEC, and we turn over all evidence related to the individuals involved, Mr. Vale, Mr. Kincaid, and Strand and Vale, to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation." The room was silent. The chat feed was frozen. The CEO looked at me. Then she looked at the camera. "Approved," she said. A single word. All of it. Effective immediately. I took a small breath. I had one more thing to say. My closing statement. I looked at the camera, at the 3,000 people, at the digital record that would now exist forever. "Greybridge Systems does not sponsor private ceremonies," I said. "We sponsor integrity." For a full second, there was nothing, just my face on the screen, and the echo of my words. Then, the chat feed dissolved. It was no longer text. It was a solid, unrelenting stream of a single emoji. The clapping hands, thousands of them, a digital standing ovation, scrolling past so fast it blurred into a waterfall. Anya Petrova's tablet, still connected to the room's audio, picked up the sound. The atrium. Through the glass wall, I could see them. The hundreds of employees gathered around the massive atrium screen. They were clapping, not polite. Corporate clapping. They were applauding. It was a roar, echoing up from 50 floors below. A sound of thunder rolling into the glass room. I had pulled the fire alarm, and instead of panicking, they were applauding the fact that the system had worked. I stepped back from the lectern, my part in the broadcast over. The CEO turned to the camera to begin the, now very different, quarterly review. I was no longer on screen. I was just Sloan Mercer. And I had never felt more practical in my life. The digital applause had faded. The roar from the atrium, 50 floors below, had subsided back into the ambient hum of a workday. The town hall was over. The CEO was now discussing Q4 projections, but the energy of the building had fundamentally shifted. The shark had been fed. The water was calm, but red. I was back at my desk on the 23rd floor. The glass walls of my office, which usually felt like a fishbowl, now felt like a fortress. The adrenaline from the presentation, from the confrontation, was draining away, leaving behind a cold, clean, sterile void. My work was done. The audit was in the hands of the external team. The legal filings were with Anya. My family was in the lobby, or perhaps in a cab, or perhaps on a bench outside. Shattering. It didn't matter. My terminal chimed. It wasn't an email. It was an internal, peer-to-peer, encrypted instant message. The sender was listed as User Anonymous 404, a ghost in the machine, a colleague, a technician, a janitor, someone who had access. The message contained no body, just a subject line, for the sister who was left out. Attached was a single media file, GH Logistics cam4.mp4. My fingers hovered. This was unsanctioned, unsolicited. It was a piece of data I had not hunted for. It had come to me. I clicked. The file opened in a secure viewer. The image was grainy, black and white, shot from a high-angle security camera. A timestamp burned in the lower left corner, October 12th, 7:13:02 p.m., the night of the wedding. The location was a service hallway, a logistics room at the glass house. It was cluttered with silver champagne buckets, stacked chairs, and racks of empty wine glasses. A man in a tuxedo, his bow tie undone and hanging loose, was on screen. Ethan Vale. He looked nothing like the polished groom in the photos. He was agitated, his face pale, running a hand through his expensive wedding day hair. He was speaking to a man in a polo shirt with the Glass House logo, the venue manager. The audio was tinny, echoing off the concrete. "Mr. Vale, the final wire hasn't posted," the manager said. His voice was tired. "The $97,000 for the final security and incidentals. I cannot, by contract, begin the main dinner service until the account is settled." I know, Ethan snapped. His voice was a low, desperate rasp. "It's coming. The bank is flagging the name. S&V Consulting. They put a temporary hold on it. That's all. It's a weekend transfer." "Sir, your contract is clear. Payment on the day, or we don't proceed." "Just look," Ethan said, leaning in. "Can you run it as a corporate event? Not a wedding. Just rename the payment in your system. Northford Holdings Corporate Retreat. Annual Gala. Something. Anything. It's the same money. It'll clear by morning. I just need you to reclassify it. Please." The manager looked skeptical. He was about to speak when the sound of laughter and music spilled through a service door just off camera. A voice, bright, clear, and utterly oblivious, cut through the tension. Mom, come here. The photographer wants one with just us by the orchid wall." "Tessa, our sparkle." Ethan flinched, looking over his shoulder at the door. My mother's voice, closer, but off-screen. "Just a second. Sparkle, I'm checking on the wine." Her voice dropped, becoming hard, conspiratorial. She was now at the edge of the frame, speaking to Ethan. "Ethan, did the other fee clear?" Ethan's eyes snapped to her. "What?" "Yes, days ago. The $25,000. That's done. That's not the problem. This is the main bill. The venue. Just give me a minute." "Well, handle it," my mother whispered, her voice a venomous hiss I had never heard but recognized instantly. "I've done my part. We can't have a delay. It looks cheap. It's embarrassing." She turned, her voice instantly transforming, becoming light and melodic again. "Coming, Sparkle. I'm right here." She disappeared from the frame. The manager sighed, looked at Ethan, then at his tablet. "S&V Consulting. Fine. I'll push it through as a corporate installation charge. But if that wire bounces by midnight, I am shutting down the bar and turning on the lights. Understand?" "It won't bounce," Ethan said, his shoulders slumping in relief. "It's fine. Thank you. He straightened his tuxedo jacket, forced a smile onto his face, and walked back through the service door, back toward the light, the music, and his new bride. The video file ended. The screen went black. I stared at my reflection in the dark monitor, the timestamp, 7:13 p.m. I had been at my desk, 12 hours into my shift, running the first data trace on the Strand and Vale servers. At the exact moment I was beginning my investigation, my mother was confirming receipt of her $25,000 payoff. I've done my part. Her part was to lie to her other daughter. Her part was to curate the reality. Her part was to cash the check and make sure the practical one, the compliance officer, the walking, talking risk, was kept 400 miles away from the sparkle. The why no longer mattered. Here was the how. It was a betrayal so complete, so transactional. It was almost elegant, a perfect closed loop of fraud. My fingers, steady, moved to my keyboard. This was not evidence for the audit. This was a closing argument. I drafted a new email. To Anya Petrova, General Counsel, Sarah Whitcomb, CEO. Subject, FW, Supplemental Evidence, Case 881B, Audio Confirmation. Body, all. This file was just delivered to me anonymously. It is security footage from the glass house, timestamped during the wedding. It provides direct audio confirmation of Mr. Vale's intent to defraud the venue by renaming the payment to bypass a hold on the fraudulent wire. More significantly, it confirms my mother, a material witness, was a paid and knowing co-conspirator in the financial cover-up, confirming receipt of the $25,000 gift from the Strand and Vale account. This will be relevant for the district attorney's office. I attached GH Logistics cam4.mp4. I hit send. Then, I opened the main internal company chat. The waterfall of applause emojis had slowed, but the town hall discussion thread was still the most active channel in the company. I found the main thread. I posted a single, new comment. Sloan Mercer. The ceremony had a sponsor after all. I attached the video file and set its permissions to public all company. I hit send, the final, uncurated receipt, for everyone. My work terminal was silent. The email was sent. The video was uploaded. But my personal phone, which I'd left on silent on my desk, began to vibrate. A long, frantic, shuddering buzz. Mom calling. It vibrated, skittering an inch on the dark wood. It stopped. It buzzed again. Mom calling. And again. Mom calling. It was a dying insect. Trapped. I watched it. My face calm. I let it buzz. I let it go to voicemail. A text notification immediately appeared. Mom. Sloan, you must pick up. You don't understand. You are destroying us. Mom. Your father is... You have to call me. This is not a joke. Pick up the phone. Now. I swiped the notification away. The phone went dark. A new message appeared. A different number. Tessa. Tessa. Sloan, I just saw the video you posted. The one from the wedding. A long pause. The 3 dots blinking, then disappearing, then blinking again. Tessa. I'm at a lawyer's office. I'm leaving him. I can't breathe. Another message. Tessa. I'm sorry. I really didn't know. About any of it. About the money. About Mom. I thought you were just busy. I'm so sorry. I stared at the words. I'm sorry. The apology I never wanted. It was as useless as my father's thumbs up. But the other part, I really didn't know. I believed her. The sparkle, the prop, the curated centerpiece, my fingers, steady and cold, typed a reply. To Tessa, keep the video. You'll need it, for your part. I sent it. I did not offer comfort. I did not offer forgiveness. I offered a tool, the practical sister, to the end. I closed the text thread. I turned back to my monitor. On my secure drive, I right-clicked on the file GH Logistics cam4.mp4. I moved it. I dropped it into the folder I'd created that first night, the one that held the screenshots of my mother's texts. The folder named Evidence, Mercer. I right-clicked on the folder. I selected Rename. I typed Evidence, Closure. I hit Enter. My work was finished. The fallout was immediate. A series of precise digital executions. At 11:01 a.m., an email was disseminated to all Graybridge Systems employees and simultaneously released to the wire services. The subject line was sterile. Corporate statement. Regarding vendor Strand and Vale. The body was brief, cold, and final. It announced that Graybridge had suspended all transactions with the vendor, pending an external investigation into material irregularities and conflicts of interest. It concluded, "We are cooperating fully with our partners and relevant law enforcement agencies. Our company's integrity is our highest priority." At 11:15 a.m., the digital ticker tape that wrapped around the atrium's central column, the one that usually showed stock prices and positive market news, flashed a new alert. Northford Holdings, NFH, announces the immediate administrative suspension of Mr. Ethan Vale, Director of Vendor Relations, pending the results of an internal review. He had not been fired. He had been suspended. In the corporate world, this was the equivalent of being placed in a pressurized airlock. The next step was the outer door. At 11:30 a.m., an email, routed through 3 layers of executive assistants, landed in my inbox. It was from the chief operating officer of the glass house at Westridge. It was a masterpiece of panicked legalese, addressed to Anya Petrova, which she had forwarded to me without comment. It deeply regretted the administrative oversight and offered a sincere apology to Greybridge Systems for our failure to adequately vet the source of third-party payments. It assured us they were now in full cooperation with our audit team. The public receipts had been posted. The ledger was now open for all to see. For an hour, I was in a secure room with the external audit team, turning over my full case file. When I finished, I had to walk back to my desk. The journey required me to cross the main atrium. It was noon. The space was filled with the lunchtime crowd. I stepped out of the elevator. The sound of my heels on the marble floor was sharp. A single, clear note in the ambient hum of 1,000 private conversations. Every conversation within a 20-foot radius of me stopped. The sea of people parted. They didn't move away in fear. They shifted, creating a vacuum, a path for me to walk. For 5 years, I had been the invisible, practical woman, the one you nodded to in the elevator, the one whose name you forgot. Today, I was Sloane Mercer. My name was a fact. They looked at me, junior analysts and senior vice presidents alike. They didn't smile. They didn't whisper. They just watched. They were looking at the hand that had pulled the fire alarm, the one who had walked into the fire, and had come out not with burns, but with the ledger. It was not admiration. It was awe. It was the raw, primal respect for consequence. Halfway across the atrium, a group by the digital waterfall stopped. Sarah Whitcomb, the CEO, was walking with 2 men I recognized as board members. She stopped. She turned. She held up a hand to the men and walked toward me. The atrium went quieter. This was a public audience. She stopped a few feet from me, creating a small, pressurized bubble of silence. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp. "Ms. Mercer," she said, her voice low, but intended to be seen. "That was a difficult morning." I waited. I did not speak. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for doing your job, especially when it must have hurt." She was offering me an out, a moment of shared humanity, a public acknowledgement of my pain. It was a political move, designed to soften the edges of the execution, to reframe my compliance as a personal, tragic sacrifice. I would not accept it. I looked directly into her eyes. My voice was not low. It was clear, steady, and carried in the quiet air. "It did not hurt, Ms. Whitcomb," I said. It clarified. A flicker in her eyes, understanding, then the briefest, most infinitesimal hint of a smile. She was a CEO. She understood clarity. She recognized a fellow pragmatist. "Indeed," she said. She gave a single, sharp nod. She had just seen that the weapon she had on her 23rd floor was perfectly balanced, entirely loyal, and had no messy emotions to complicate its use. She turned and rejoined the board members, their conversation resuming, but their pace visibly quicker. I continued my walk. I was heading for the legal wing, on the other side of the main security turnstiles, and there, at the edge of the world, where the polished corporate granite met the glass doors to the outside street, was the debris. My mother. She was standing just inside the security line, a small, lost figure in a vast, echoing space. She was still wearing her weekend cashmere, but it was rumpled, and she was still wearing her shoes, the cream-colored, open-toed pumps she had put on that morning for a celebratory brunch. Party shoes. They were a grotesque joke on this sterile, gray floor. She was a piece of curated reality that had strayed into the ledger, and the numbers had rejected her. She saw me approaching, her face, which had been pale and slack, contorted. It was a mask of pure, primal desperation. She took a single, stumbling step toward me. Her hand came up, reaching. "Sloane," she whispered, her voice cracking. Sloan, please. Her mouth opened to beg me for money, to curse my name, to ask me to reverse the unreversible. The words never came. Her eyes darted, just past my shoulder. I didn't have to turn. I knew. She saw them. The two figures who had detached themselves from the wall, the uniformed security officer from 23B, and the quiet man in the dark suit from Anya Petrova's legal team. They were not walking toward me. They were walking toward her. My mother's mouth snapped shut. The hand that had been reaching for me, her daughter, her last hope, fell to her side. She flinched, pulling her expensive coat tighter. The curator, the master of social appearances, finally understood. The institution was done with her. She had no more standing. She was a liability to be removed. The man in the suit murmured something to her, his voice inaudible. His gesture was polite, firm, and final, toward the door. Behind her, pressed against the glass of the revolving door, was Tessa. She was a ghost. The sparkle was gone, scrubbed away by a morning of brutal truth. Her eyes were red, raw, and swollen. She was staring at her phone, her thumb endlessly, numbly scrolling, as if the answer, or an escape, was somewhere in the feed. My mother, defeated, was gently propelled by the two men toward the exit. She passed her daughter without a word. Tessa looked up, her gaze empty. It drifted, then found me. I stopped. We were 30 feet apart, two sisters, separated by a sea of marble, a wall of glass, and a lifetime of lies. Her face was a silent, shattered question. Why? How could you? I looked at her. I looked at the wreckage of the sister I never really had, the one who had been given the audience while I had been given the work. I gave her no apology. I gave her no comfort. I gave her a single, slow, deliberate nod. This is the truth. This is the fact. This is the world you were living in. This is the only wedding gift I have for you. Her eyes closed, a single tear escaping. She understood. She turned her back to me, her shoulders shaking, and pushed her way through the revolving door, following her mother out into a city that no longer belonged to her. I watched the glass spin. Then I turned away from the light, away from the atrium, away. I swiped my badge at the security turnstile. The light flashed green. I walked down the quiet, carpeted corridor of the legal wing. The sound of my heels muffled. All business. I pushed open the heavy door to conference room 12A. Anya Petrova and the external audit team were waiting. The long table was covered in files. In the center, a single, bound document, my official affidavit. I picked up the black pen, uncapped it, and signed my name to the ledger. The meeting was over. It was 4 the external audit team. A trio of pale, efficient men in identical gray suits were packing their briefcases. The sound of binders snapping shut was finite, like doors locking. Anya Petrova, our general counsel, was signing the final engagement letter, her signature a sharp, decisive scrawl. We were the only ones left in the vast, sterile conference room. The table was a graveyard of empty coffee cups and discarded legal pads. In front of me, in the center of the black, reflective table, was the last document, a clean, pristine copy of the original invoice from the glass house, the one for $209,000. It was the artifact, the receipt. One of the auditors, the senior partner, paused. Ms. Mercer, for our final classification, he slid a heavy black felt-tip pen toward me. It was not a request. It was procedure. I picked up the pen. It was cool to the touch. I pulled the invoice toward me. The elegant, leafy logo, the fraudulent vendor name, the itemized, astronomical cost of my sister's sparkle. I uncapped the pen. The click was loud in the silent room, in the top right margin, in the clean white space above the total. I wrote 3 words. My handwriting was not shaky. It was level, clear, and perfectly spaced. Reclassified as personal liability. I capped the pen. I slid the document back to the center of the table. A simple memo, a recategorization, the final, authoritative stroke of the ledger. That concludes the internal file, Anya said, not looking up from her own paperwork. The district attorney's office takes it from here. The auditors nodded. They zipped their briefcases, stood in unison, and left. The heavy door hissed shut, sealing the room. I returned to my office. The 23rd floor was quiet. The day's panic and digital applause had subsided. The workday was ending. The sun was low, casting long, geometric shadows across the polished concrete floor. My office was striped in orange and black. I sat at my terminal. The blue light of the monitor felt cool, a contrast to the warm, dying light of the sun. I opened a new, blank email. My fingers were steady on the keys. To Ethan Vale. Secure at redacted. Come the private, encrypted address I had found in the server logs. CC. I typed the names, one by one, like entries in a ledger. Eleanor, Mercer at Cliffhaven, Net Richard, Mercer at Cliffhaven, Net Tessa, Vale at redacted, com. I paused at that one. I wondered, idly, if she would keep the name. It didn't matter. The email would find her. Attachment. I selected the two files. Findings Report 881B Final PDF. Civil Repayment Demand GHS PDF. I wrote the body of the email. It took 4 seconds. Attached for your records are the final findings of the internal investigation and the civil repayment demand for $209,000 filed by Graybridge Systems. We expect full remittance within 30 business days to avoid further asset seizure. There was nothing else to say. I moved the cursor to the subject line. My fingers hovered. This was the true, final signature, the one that closed the file. I typed one word. Subject. Congratulations. I hit send. The email was gone. A single, digital packet, containing the entire precise cost of their curated reality, now hurtling through the dark. I stood up. My chair rolled back with a quiet, hydraulic sigh. I walked out of my office to the glass railing, the one overlooking the 50-story atrium. It was nearly 6 p.m. The crowds were gone. The atrium was a vast, silent canyon of steel and marble, the digital stock ticker running on the far wall, casting a green, ghostly light. I looked down at the spot by the main turnstiles, the spot where they had stood that morning, an island of soft cashmere and rising panic, the spot where my mother had called me sulky, and Tessa had flashed her diamond like a warning light. I thought of the photos from last week, the laughter, the white candles, the glass house. Now, there was no one laughing. It was just a building. The theater was empty. The show was over. My personal phone vibrated in my pocket, a single, insistent buzz. I pulled it out. The screen was dark, but a text preview glowed on the lock screen. Mom, Sloan, please, just come home. We can talk. Home, a word, a location, a file that was no longer relevant. I didn't swipe. I didn't mute. I pressed the power button on the side of the phone. The screen went black. A final, physical disconnection. I put the dark, silent rectangle back in my pocket. I stood there for a moment, in the quiet of the 23rd floor, looking down at the empty stage. I spoke to no one, to the glass, to the recycled air. I was never missing, I said, my voice so low it was just a breath. I was balancing the books. I turned from the glass. I walked back into my office. The room was dark, the sun gone. The motion sensor lights clicked on, illuminating my desk. The desk was clean. I had already packed my briefcase. The only thing remaining was the 9x12 white envelope I had carried in that morning, the one I had laid on the black table, the one with my handwriting. For when they ask why, its job was done. I looked at it, a single white rectangle on the dark wood. It was still, silent. I did not take it. It did not belong to me. It belonged to the file. It belonged to the ledger. I picked up my briefcase. I turned. I walked out of the office. The motion sensor lights clicked off, plunging the room into darkness. The scene, the final frame, lingered for a beat on the dark, empty desk, and on the single white envelope, still visible in the sliver of light from the hallway, still holding the faint warmth of my hand. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. So please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and consider supporting us further by hitting that hype button. It really helps this story get heard by more people.